This week we're marking the 30th anniversary of the signing of the Dayton Peace Accord, which ended the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, a war that took the lives of about 100,000 people and displaced half the population and inflicted enormous devastation. Usually a civil war ends when one party wins and then simply imposes its will on the others. This was a war that ended in negotiated fashion. Bosnia was really a country that was destroyed. So the task was, how do you put that together again and you make it into a country? And you do this without a military defeat. So it's a very, very almost unprecedented task. One big achievement of Dayton was that it successfully got Bosnia over that transition, sort of recreated a state where the state had broken down. The other things that I think Dayton did very well was it created a framework in which you could have rebuilding and reconstruction with a lot of international assistance from the United States, from the European Union, from the United Nations. They did their best, but there are some major flaws about the Dayton arrangements. 30 years after the end of war, we still have an international official, the High Representative, who plays an important governing role and who exercises sweeping powers, at least in theory, over that country, which is a highly irregular situation. It is in fact the only country that has that sort of thing. That made a lot of sense in the early years after the war, but now it's really been much too long. And another respect in which Dayton falls short is that it doesn't allow the peoples, the three constituent peoples of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the effective representation in state authorities. It uses this clumsy assumption that any leader's ethnicity makes that leader a representative of all others of that ethnicity, which really, if you think about it, it's not a healthy assumption. And it's led to a lot of mistrust and a lot of frustration. It's always difficult to draw lessons from something that happened 30 years ago and try to apply them in a totally different context. And, it would be wrong to push that analogy very far. But there are three things that were very important for the success of peacemaking in the Western Balkans. One was to provide security. There were large and very effective and credible peacekeeping forces able to deter successfully any challenges from any local stakeholder. There was also an international authority whose powers were very sweeping, if not unlimited. The third thing I would say was that there was a process of building up and bringing in local cadres into governing institutions so that when internationals left, these institutions remained behind with people who knew how to operate them and could take ownership of them. Bosnian politics are marked by, really strong controversies. Sometimes when we talk about Dayton in quotes or the Constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina, we talk about it as though it's kind of a static thing. And what it really is the set of rules and norms by which a society governs itself. It's like any other country's constitution. It requires people to go and interpret it and to do so in a spirit of good faith and compromise. And that is something that is still fragile in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but that is by no means completely absent. I think one of the tasks for, especially the European Union, is that they need to try to facilitate the spirit. One other thing that would be worth saying, Dayton represented a successful bridging of what was a quite tense relationship between the United States and its European allies at the time, and Russia, which was an integral part of the contact group that led to the Dayton Peace Accord.